Hey, what's up guys? John here. Absolute bombshell released about Gavin Newsom, George Gascon, the new district attorney in LA, and George Soros and his son Alexander Soros. So in 2019, September, Alexander and Gavin were seen here taking this picture. Only 1 month later did Gavin receive a $3.2 million house paid in cash. Someone gifted it to his cousin, and then his cousin signed it over to him. Then he took out a loan on that property for $2.7 million. Just took the cash out, held the property. Then, coincidentally, about 9 months later, he brings the district attorney from San Francisco down to LA, and then what happens? George Soros gives $2.5 million towards his campaign. That guy gets elected, this guy, George Gascon. Then he makes massive changes within 24 hours of becoming the district attorney. The district attorney essentially will tell you what's legal and not legal and what will be criminally charged and not charged. So now, prostitution, you will not get arrested for it. Trespassing, you will not get arrested for it. Drug possession, no problem. Death penalty, completely gone. And cash bail is off the table entirely, among many, many other things. So all these changes happened overnight. And in this video, I'm gonna break down what their true plan is for California. It is absolutely concerning. Mainstream media is not covering it. And I believe huge problems are right in front of us for California. Please hit that like button. When you do, YouTube's gonna share the content. The more people we see it, the more likely it is that we get people to participate in the Recall Gavin movement and we get California back on track. So please hit that like button and let's begin. So who is George Soros and why would he contribute so much money to just a random district attorney? Well, George Soros is a billionaire investor. He owns a company called the Quantum Fund, founded in 1973. He's born in 1930 in Germany during the Holocaust. At that time, his dad signed him over to an official so he could see to his safety that nothing would happen to George. And at that time, George Soros saw many people lose their properties and were killed. And what he then did was he learned a very valuable lesson. He said just to always think ahead. He put no feelings towards all the loss and all the pain that happened during that era. So what he then did was he developed a mindset, and that mindset made him an aggressive and ruthless businessman that put no real morals or feelings towards anyone else's well-being during his climb to his status that he's in now. He then opened up this company called Open Society Foundation. He describes it as a nonprofit, however, it's nothing like a nonprofit. And here's a list of what they want to achieve in their journey with Open Society Foundation. And look at the similarities between what they want to achieve and what George Gascon implemented on day one of his election as district attorney. Here are the key long-term investments for the Open Society Foundation: drug policy reform, early childhood development, international justice, LGBTI rights, mass incarceration, national resource revenues, sex worker rights, civil rights for Roma, women's rights. So day one, he addressed mass incarceration, drug policy reform, sex worker rights. So essentially, he hit 40% of the list on day one. As well as the Open Society Foundation, their whole premise is an open society. So California is perfect because it borders Mexico, and with Gavin Newsom in office, allowing many undocumented people to come over. We have 2 million undocumented people in California. 2 million out of a population of 40 million, meaning 1 in 20 people in California is undocumented. Gavin Newsom responded by issuing a $125 million gift to them during the shutdown. Taxpayer revenue, $125 million. Gavin then follows it up 6 months later with this breaking document that he signed into law, stating that minorities or LGBTQ must be in leadership roles inside of companies. So now companies have to operate inside of a guideline based on what one looks like or how they identify. This could lead to a big problem. If you were running a company, I would imagine you'd want to hire based upon credentials and who's best for the role. Now, this is no longer the case in California. Now, why would he do something like that? To me personally, it doesn't matter who one is and who they identify as. What matters is their credentials and how they qualify for the job that I'm offering. However, just to put this disclosure out there, all people should identify with however they feel best to identify. and there should never be an outside judgment based upon that. However, George Soros does not feel the same way, as he's a really big donor with the trans rights campaign. And this reads as follows: fight bigotry. 98% of straight men are unwilling to date trans women because of hatred. Now, what a trans woman is denoting or relating to a person whose sense of personal identity or gender does not correspond with their birth of sex. So if you're a heterosexual male, meaning you're interested exclusively in women, dating women, marrying women, being with women only, then it means that you're likely acting out of some form of hatred. Now this, to me, is absolutely insane. I can't believe that this is out there. However, this is 2020 and this is the world that we live in. So here's where I see this going. Now, with the inequality is the main roadblock that they tried to solve, allegedly, through their nonprofit and through a lot of these foundations. Many of these foundations that are they're poised as a charitable good here for human rights. However, they're really just a vehicle for them to push their own agenda through so they can yield massive, massive profits through a tax-free shelter. Now, what this means with solving inequality, they always show you inequality in a montage and everyone's miserable, and then they show you what it would look like on the other side with rainbows and waterfalls and kids jumping through jump rope, and life has never been better. Now, what that really means is they want to build out a system and a plan to where they can strip the middle class and the higher income levels to bring everyone down to a dependent state, to where then the state controls them. So when you take all this into consideration, you have a huge opportunity for George Soros to really fulfill his goals of Open Society Foundation through Gavin Newsom, as Gavin Newsom acts almost as the gatekeeper for America through the US-Mexico border. This affords Newsom so much power. He's almost like a god for America. And Soros is willing to pay for that, obviously. Soros sees true value in Newsom to fulfill his goals and ambitions. Now, what really is that goal and ambition? So there'd really be two main strategies here for them to implement their plan. They say that there's 7 or 8 plans initially on the Open Society Foundation, and obviously with what Gavin Newsom's doing, but really there's 2 things. Those things really just segue into these 2 major things. The first is they would need to destroy small business and one's ability to provide for themselves, to get them more dependent on the state and then more open-minded and more flexible to considering other ways to live. And then 2 would be to destroy the traditional American family. They can destroy the American family, then they will win. Now, one way they could do that could be to bring in a lot of people from other countries to destroy American tradition, to where it becomes more diluted and everyone has one way of life. And then at that point, they can really dial in and zone in on this goal. So how would they go about doing this? First, they'd shut down small business. They'd keep businesses closed, so that way the debt snowballs, the rent snowballs, the utility bills, all the expenses continue snowballing month after month after month. They continue dragging that on to where it becomes death by 1,000 cuts for small business. Then essentially these businesses will fold. The employees will be in a position to where they're out there competing with millions and millions of other people for jobs, and a majority of them will not find work, or if they do find work, the wages will be depressed, very depressed, because there's only going to be so many people hiring, yet so many people looking for employment. Supply and demand, prices come down. So wages will come down a lot, and these employees will likely not have enough to make it. So they'll be dependent on the state. The business owners will have bad credit. They won't be able to buy properties. They won't be able to really find a secondary business. So then they would become dependent on the state. So that would be part 1. Hypothetically, that would work out quite well. And then 2 would be to keep kids not at school. They would need to keep them at home, because this does 2 things. 1, it stops both parents from going out working. So generally it's a husband and wife working. Now one will have to stay home to watch the child and educate the child. Also, that child then would need lunch. Normally they would get lunch at school. That's no longer the case. So as this happens, the kids, they end up getting a more poor education socially, and they don't develop the same way. So this ultimately hurts the child in the long term. They become more easily manipulated. The parents lose a tremendous amount of money, and they ultimately fall into a depressed state financially. So this works out quite well for the long-term plan. And coincidentally, now schools are closed in California, and we need to get to a number, according to Gavin Newsom, of 38 per 100,000. 38 per 100,000. Right now we're at 138 per 100,000, meaning we need to drop about 70% in cases for schools to resume. That does not look like that's going to happen, especially given the fact that everything is progressing given the time of year and what's going on right now. In addition, very, very, very strict regulations and almost unbearable circumstances for landlords to operate and run a profitable business. So then ultimately, the government will be able to roll out there and seize the properties, take the properties. And it would be a very legal, barely constitutional, but still legal way for them to seize great power and control. Then ultimately having a system set up in place to where the state could appoint 3 types of people to buy these distressed properties. Either the state, nonprofits, or tenants. However, tenants won't be able to most likely qualify due to the strict regulations. So they won't have 2-year stable income, they won't have the cash, they won't have the credit, and they simply won't have a chance to buy the properties. Then a nonprofit or a charity, which would be very convenient, or the state of California. So you start adding all these things together and it really starts to kind of make sense. And then what ultimately happens is these families become much more stressed financially and they're more likely to divide. And as we've seen so far this year, divorce rates have increased 34%. And as divorces happen, their unit's wealth drops by about 40% at the time of a divorce. So wealth drops, security drops, families drop, and independence drops. So then ultimately what happens is they all slowly start chipping away and heading towards the government for assistance. So what can we do? Well, we have a few options. One, we can hit the like button. When you hit the like button, YouTube's going to share the content. When they share it, more people will see it, and it's very likely that more people will participate in the Recall Gavin petition. 2 is you can also participate in the Recall Gavin petition. I have the link pinned in the top comment as well as all of my references for everything that I've said in this video. And 3, you can share it. You can share this video. There's a little share button right here with a friend or possibly a friend in California. The more people that see this, the better we all are. So that being said, looking forward to the next video. Please consider subscribing and I'll see you there.